Welcome back, everyone. This is Ask Daniel number 49 with Coach Michael.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
How are you today?
Doing really well. Thanks.
Awesome. And by the way, as you recall, last time, Mike, we talked about some questions from somebody named Alex. I don't know if you remember the name, but we talked about, he was the one who asked, like, is it okay to have a beer before going to bed and something like that. He sent me a message on Instagram where I've been communicating with him and basically sharing a success story.
Well, good.
Excellent. I know he's doing really, really well. So I'm going to do a separate episode on that next week, just sharing his success story. So he's doing fantastic.
Oh, great. That's great to hear. Excellent.
All right. So for everybody out there, we are doing, a weekly show or episode here where me and Mike are going maybe a little bit deeper into fewer questions than my typical episodes. So let's jump right into it. And for everybody, disclaimer here: nothing is medical advice. Just me and Mike just sharing our thoughts here. And by the way, I'm gonna try to do this fancy thing where I share the screen. And tell me if you can see this, Mike.
Okay.
1 second. Let's see. So share screen. And what we're going to do is a Chrome tab, and that's going to be this guy here. Share. There. Do you see anything?
I do.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It is working. All right. So this is the first question here, and actually it's 3 questions, and this is from Juro, who's been in touch before. So let me read it. Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for explaining the gas and brake system. It does explain a lot of things that I experienced. I have 3 follow-up questions if you don't mind. Number 1, just yesterday, I had another episode of sleeplessness, and I can't explain how it ended up like this. I was calm the whole day and was really sleepy in the evening, not worried, hyperaroused at all, but suddenly I started having anxiety. I felt like out of nowhere. I wasn't thinking anything worrisome before. It feels like anxiety, just started randomly, and I don't have any control over it. And usually I'm very tired at that time. So I know it would be better to get up, but my body feels so heavy, so I keep lying there. And I don't know how to manage this hyperarousal as it strikes so unexpectedly. I know I asked you a similar question already, but I still can't explain why I keep having sleep problems when my brake system feels inactive. Any ideas on this? So basically, to summarize this one, it's like, I think there are kind of 2 components to this question. One is that, like, I don't feel worried, but still I can't sleep. And then I kind of get stressed. And then when you have this hyperarousal, how do you go about it? So what are your thoughts on this one, Mike?
Well, this is, you hear this kind of scenario a lot. Someone who feels like their day went fine, and everything's fine, in evening, everything's good. And then bedtime's getting really close. And then the anxiety starts to ramp up, like hockey stick graph kind of style. And it can be really frustrating because you feel like, why is this happening? I'm not worried about anything in particular. It's that kind of out of nowhere sort of anxiety, but it's clearly associated with the start of the sleep window. And so, I think you want to just follow the standard CBT instructions. You don't want to get into bed if you feel like you are anxious, struggling to sleep. If that sleepiness, evaporates on your way from, like, your living room to your bedroom, or if you feel anxiety is starting to increase, then it's not bedtime. And you want to, like, I like the idea of that cutoff, where you just have a time where it's like, okay, if everything feels okay after this time, at some point I'll climb into bed. But if you feel anxiety, you have to kind of distract yourself with other things. The last thing you want to do is focus on sleep. And I like the, rephrasing things like allow sleepiness to happen. So, good job doing things during the day to have a nice day and stay calm and everything's great and you're having, hopefully enjoying your day. That's the main thing. And then that anxiety increase close to bedtime is something that I find will eventually kind of dissipate. It kind of fades away over time, as long as you're not struggling to sleep in bed. Like, never ever struggle.
Absolutely. And I think that, I want to go into, like, to add 2 things to that is, okay, going back here, let's see. One is this, again, very common question of, like, why is it that like I don't particularly feel stressed. I have nothing to worry about, yet I can't sleep or something like that. And I would just want to point out to Juro here that that is not uncommon at all. It's actually very common. And one is, like Mike said, just the fact that you've had trouble sleeping and now it's time to bed, that in itself can produce some anxiety. But either way, my bigger point here is that hyperarousal can be really sneaky. Oftentimes people feel like you don't feel stressed at all, but then you just can't sleep. And it's like, there is probably some hyperarousal there. You just, like really, really low grade anxiety is there and you just can't even sense it. That is the common reason why people like, I'm in bed and I'm not stressed, but I can't sleep. It is probably that sneaky hyperarousal. So What do you do about it? Like Mike has already mentioned here, like you can kind of just distract yourself is kind of a very simple one. Like just do something that has nothing to do with sleep that you enjoy, that's good. I think if someone, that will work really well if you can do it, meaning if you can say like, okay, I'm going to get out of bed and read this book that I enjoy, and that comes easy to you, that's perfect, But if it becomes really an ongoing, if somebody has like a lot of hyperarousal all the time, then sometimes it's hard to distract yourself. Like it's hard to get out of that way of thinking. And that's when I think you have to go deeper. Like you have to either, I think the two things I talk about all the time is like, you have to really go into thought work, like work on the thoughts that are behind the hyperarousal and figure them out and change those, or mindfulness works too. But both those things are pretty, both those things are work, like they're practice. So distraction is great. If you can't do that, you probably have to go deeper, right?
Yeah. You just have to remind yourself you can't force yourself to fall asleep. It is just not possible. And the harder you try, the more elusive sleep gets. And so the key is never to try, and how you don't try can be different with everybody. Some people like to do a little breath work, and some people like to just read, and some people like to watch a little TV or whatever it is. The key is never to focus on sleep, never try to force sleep. And in bed, that's when you want to just kind of take your mind somewhere, right? And it's just like you and your mind. So you just kind of like enjoy the time, like think about something creative that you've always wanted to think about. And that can be a great distraction.
And that becomes the exact same thing for hyperarousal. Just want to make that point. That just as you can't force sleep, the more you try to force yourself to sleep, same thing happens with hyperarousal. The more you intently try to make yourself more calm, the more hyperaroused you get. Which I think actually this will be a great segue to kind of the next question here from Juro, which says this one. Okay, last one I want to sneak in here, Juro, is like, a lot of people say like, it seems like I don't have enough sleep drive. I'm just not, but it's actually more like the break thing there. Like, when you have a lot of hyperarousal, it kind of masks the sleep drive. But anyway, Number 2, this is one based on the first question. If I start doing some relaxation techniques to stop that hyperarousal, like breathing or meditation, would that count as a sleep effort? What do you think, Mike?
Doing relaxation for the purpose of falling asleep is an effort. It's sleep effort. It's doing something specific. Oh, yeah.
That's right.
And even if the specific thing seems really highly likely to produce sleep,
I was sitting, yeah.
Even if you think it's highly likely to produce sleep, it's an effort. You're doing something specific to make yourself fall asleep. It might work once, but it's not the long-term solution. It's going to get less effective over time. It's a slippery slope. It's not the road you want to go down. So relaxation's great. I often suggest practice in the afternoon so you really feel comfortable with it. Don't do this right before bedtime, especially the first time. Like really try it during the day for a while, for a week or two, and just kind of like get the idea of relaxation, and then maybe incorporate a little bit into your evening routine. But like I kind of discourage it like right at bedtime or in bed, that kind of thing. I mean, some simple like just relaxing breathing, like sighing and kind of a deep breath stretch. Okay, that's one thing. But like I'm going to do some abdominal breathing, or I'm going to do some, whatever other kinds of yoga stretching kind of things. If the intention is to get sleepy, it's a sleep going to backfire.
100%.
It's going to backfire.
Yeah, that's exactly echoing my thought. And we have a live question here from Elena, who's been really supportive. She shared a lot of great content with us, and so let's read this. Actually, oh, I have to do this thing. Hold on. I'm going to show this. This is so cool. I love this feature.
Hey, look at that. Nice.
So, Melina, thank you for answering all my questions. So continuing from my comment, my wake up time is 9 and my sleep window starts at 1. Hold on. Oh, sorry, I got distracted. My wake up time is 9 and my sleep window starts at 1. So how do I go about getting out of the sleep window or extending? Right. And then continuing here. I'm not ready yet, but whenever I am, like to know how to do it. I like to hear. Yeah, love this. This is your thing. I learned this from you, Coach Michael. So the question here is like she's been in this like sleep window, like 1 to 9, and how does she segue out of that?
Okay, the rock, the anchor, is your morning. That's the major, consistent thing that you want to make sure is just rock solid. You got an alarm or a method, and you're up at a certain time. On the other side of things, the start of the sleep window, your morning time minus X number of hours that you've been sleeping, roughly. The start of your sleep window has this secondary component, not just a clock time, but also and when you feel truly sleepy, like 1 o'clock and when you feel sleepy, or 2 o'clock and when you feel sleepy. So if you don't feel truly sleepy, it isn't bedtime. So what I'd like to suggest, and it's, as you know, Daniel, I like to say, okay, let's say you've done the math, you got your sleep window, let's say it's 7 hours or something like that. Instead of saying like whatever the clock time is at the start of that 7-hour window, a little before that, maybe like half an hour, something like that, 15 minutes. At that point, that starts what I call your kind of like your sleep window. And you just don't even check the time at that point. You're done with time. I'm such a proponent of ditching time at night. It is just it's such an anxiety inducer. It's performance anxiety. Like, I could say a silly example, like, okay, here's an ice cream cone. I want you to eat it in 30 seconds. Ready, go. And I start a stopwatch. The most enjoyable thing I can think of is eating an ice cream cone, okay? Just stay with me here. Well, if I put a time component to it, now I have a bit of anxiety associated with it. Okay, so forget the ice cream eating example. Now talk about sleep. Like, okay, this is the start of your sleep window, kind of like go. I don't know. For some people, it doesn't work really well to keep it really strict. Some people, it does work really well. But I encourage someone, if they're trying the sleep window the traditional way, to consider trying ditch the clock a few minutes before the start of your sleep window, and then you're just listening to yourself. Are you losing focus? If you are, you climb into bed. If you're not, you don't climb into bed.
I love that. I want to show this one. Somebody loves the ice cream analogy. I do that too. I think it was amazing. Melina said this one, which is so cool. And I think Melina already, she's really happy with this answer already, but just to kind of translate what Mike just said directly to your sleep window. So Melina's sleep window was like, I don't go to bed before 1 and I get out of bed 9 a.m. So pretty late one, interestingly, delayed sleep phase, which is totally cool. But then it would be like at midnight, I'm going to stop checking the time and then, just go by how it feels, something like that. And guess what? I think after a couple of weeks or whatever, you don't have a sleep window anymore. It's like, right. You're just out of it.
You just wait until you're truly sleepy.
So I think that's perfect. Love it. All right, cool. So let's hide this one and go back to Juro. We already talked about your second question and then third one. The third question, and let me share this again. Let me share this one again so everybody can see here. We are down to, let me try to highlight this. Maybe it worked really good. The third one is pure curiosity. A long time ago, before I had insomnia problems, I remembered reading about some military technique to fall asleep. It said that soldiers could fall asleep in 60 seconds at will. If you Google it, you'll see lots of articles on this technique. I used to believe that, but now I really question whether this is true. Is it really possible, putting insomnia aside, to train yourself to sleep anytime, anywhere, like to build a conditioned response? And if this is true, how does it work with the gas brake system? Oh my gosh, this is so fun. Mike, what do you think?
I don't think it's possible to train yourself to fall asleep anytime, anywhere, for two big reasons. Your natural sleep drive what we call your homeostatic sleep drive. It builds while you're awake. So let's say you wanted to fall asleep 3 hours after you got up in the morning. It's probably not likely to happen because your sleep drive is really low, your homeostatic sleep drive. The second reason is your other sleep drive, which is your circadian sleep drive. That's that one that kind of like fluctuates a little bit, a little like more of like a wave, like back and forth. But you know, good sleep happens when you kind of time the two to happen at about the same time. So you can't train yourself to physiologically fall asleep if those two sleep drives aren't kind of in the ballpark of where they should be, or where they usually are when you fall asleep naturally.
And within 60 seconds, no. So I think, definitely, there's no way you can train yourself that. No. I think what may happen in the military is that they're doing these exercises and they really like, they're literally only given like 4 hours to sleep or something like that. Yeah. Crazy. And then they happen to fall asleep. But no, there's nothing there. It's fun, Juro. I love the comic relief there with that one. We have a follow-up question here live from Lynn. I love these live questions. She said, I'm a little bit afraid of going somewhere on a vacation and not being able to sleep because of a fan, LOL. I remember Coach Michael mentioning something about becoming a great sleeper, meaning sleep in any place and when any type of effort. But is that even considered an effort by blocking out the light from the outside? Sorry, I'm trying to type fast.
Take your time, Elena, no problem.
All right, I think we can just, let's go back to this one and say, I can start this one and say that I find it very common actually that someone is having trouble sleeping, having insomnia, right? And you work on that to a point where they're actually doing pretty well on a regular night, but there's still that kind of anticipatory insomnia lingering when things change. When I'm traveling, I still have trouble sleeping, or that day before I have to do things at work, that's when I still have trouble sleeping. And I think, my little spiel about this one is that, number one, the kind of acute insomnia thing that you often talk about, Michael, that when things are different, it's not abnormal to sleep less. Like when you're on vacation in a new environment and you sleep less, that's nothing strange or unusual. In fact, you can definitely say that that's a good thing. You can translate that good. That means when you're in your usual environment, you sleep good, and when you're in a different one, you don't. That means actually your home environment is a good one. So that's a kind of a good spin on that one.
Yeah.
Number two is, the more you do it, the better things get. Meaning, if somebody's like really afraid of traveling, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not gonna go that trip or not the other trip too, but I have to do this one," then there's that buildup. Like, "Oh my gosh, I have to travel this time. I'm really not gonna sleep, right?" And then it becomes like so much pressure, anxiety that it ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you do the kind of fearless thing and be like, I'm going to go on this trip, and I'm not going to cancel this trip. I'm not going to postpone. I'm not going to do anything differently. Then you will see that you can sleep even when you're traveling, and you can sleep even if there's a fan running,
Yes.
What do you think of this, Mike?
Yeah. When you're talking about blocking out light and things like that, you're talking about sensory deprivation, which is not an effort. It's not an effort to kind of block out things that would naturally disrupt you, like abrupt noises or like a lot of light. Kind of putting yourself in a bit of a sensory deprived environment is just common sense. So like a fan is common. A lot of people leave it right. I have a fan going in our room. It's just kind of like a low hum, and it just kind of moves the air around. I feel more comfortable, and I just leave it at that. It's been running for like 30 years. I don't think I've ever turned it off. Traveling, first of all, if you're going on vacation, you should be like super excited. And the fact that you're like sleeping and being excited about traveling on vacation, you're still sleeping at home. That's a good sign, right? I want to make a comment about, time zones. If you're going through at least a couple of time zones, if not more, that's going to be kind of like Daniel was saying, it's like an acute thing. It's like an abrupt thing to influencing your sleep schedule. So, there are ways to kind of mitigate jet lag a little bit. The main thing is just get outside in the morning light. That's like, don't sleep the day away, if you want to switch to that schedule. So, that would be a comment I would say. Is there another?
I don't think
I think
so.
I'm
I
missing
think
something to the question.
no, I
No?
think that was it. I think, Melina, if we missed something, let us know. And thanks for these questions. And then, yeah, we did this. Okay, cool. So we're moving along here, and this is Faye, who's also been in touch for quite a bit. And we answered some questions before from Faye, and so let's read this. We'll start here. I think let's start here. I think I've encountered rebound insomnia after. Oh, sorry, I'm forgetting to share this. I want to share this with everyone here. I think I've encountered rebound insomnia after sleeping well for a couple of weeks straight. I never told you, but I'm a long time. I've panic disorder, anxiety sufferer, and I've been many OCD types, irrational thoughts and behaviors that often lead to panic attacks. Lately, I've been obsessing about my breathing. Sometimes I become super conscious about my breathing, and this leads to panic because sometimes I would feel like I'm not getting enough air or feel like I'm going to forget to breathe. After I exhale, I feel like I'm going to forget to inhale again, and I've been obsessively monitoring my breathing patterns. This is keeping me awake because we breathe constantly. Breathing is done unconsciously, but I'm super aware, which is making me very hard to sleep. Until 2 days ago, I was able to sleep either in my bed or living room couch, so I've been laying there down all day, even though it's not bedtime. Do you recommend starting over from insight number 1, meaning like watching every single episode on the channel? Honestly, I haven't tried these CBTI techniques yet because I didn't need to until this point after finding your channel. 2 days in a row, I took my usual medication, Seroquel, and had a couple of beers with it, and I even dosed up on Seroquel second day, but it didn't work. I also did extra exercise that day and had a little extra beer than usual. It did become super drowsy and went to bed, but I immediately started feeling anxious about my breathing and became wide awake. I'm very afraid that I'm going to be having sleepless nights ahead of me like I did last year. To summarize, I have 3 main questions. How do you think I should deal with the obsessive breathing consciousness? Should I start over from scratch with your CBTI techniques? Should I just quit medication since it's not working anymore? And I think, yeah, okay. So I think I want to start actually by kind of a big picture thing here, which is if we start from the top here, we see that Faye said, I've been sleeping well for a couple of weeks straight. And so when I hear, and so I'm sure you get this too, Mike, a lot, but I often get this. It's one of the most common questions I get. It's that it's kind of a question like, I've been sleeping well for 3 days, but then I didn't sleep at all. Or I've been sleeping well for 2 weeks and now I didn't sleep, or some of that, something of that nature. And whenever I see that, I'm always like, focus on the positive here. Like the fact that the real headline, the cool, the amazing thing is that you slept well for a long time. That's great. That's amazing. And this setback is nothing but kind of like it's a hiccup. It's a little hiccup. I know you heard this analogy many times, Michael, but I'm sharing it again here, which is think of it as like, you're on your way to a place where you sleep really well. You're kind of hiking there, and then you stumble on a rock. You don't sleep for a couple of days. Well, if you stay, look at the rock, examine it, lift it up, see how you can change it. Like, how can I, etc. You get stuck there. You never get to that point of good sleep. So it's the key always for everyone tuning in here is like when you're sleeping good, then something happens. Try not to change anything, react to, just keep on going. That's the big one. And because we're seeing here, and I'm going to go back to this email, what we're seeing here is a lot of effort, meaning like, Faye, you had trouble sleeping, and then you started like drinking more alcohol, you upped the dose of the medication, you're thinking about what to do, etc. This to me is like, I'm really worried when I hear these things because that's like, somebody's going down the rabbit hole. Somebody's trying this, that didn't work, trying this other thing, changing this, changing that. So I think my big picture thing here is like, try to react as little as possible. If before this happening, you were taking a medication, take it the same dose, same time, everything like before. Don't try to change anything. And I heard like something here, and so like, I'm starting to spend like hours on the couch, kind of trying to sleep. Don't do that either. Like try, like the hardest thing is like not doing anything, but when you're having this kind of setback, this like hiccup, try to not react to it. That's kind of my big ticket item here. And so I think I'm going to ask this, Mike, to go back here, and maybe I'll ask you. I don't know. Which actually, I'm not sure what is best here. thoughts on this first? How do you think I should deal with obsessive breathing consciousness? Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so that was an interesting one, and an idea came to mind. Okay, breathing is like sleep; it's natural. You can't not breathe forever. You can't not sleep forever. And like these processes that are kind of natural, when you focus on them, they can get kind of difficult, right? Like, if you tell someone like, focus on your breathing, think about your breathing. It's like, all of a sudden it becomes kind of difficult for anybody. You kind of get that weird feeling like, well, should I breathe in now? Should I not breathe it? How much should I breathe? How much should I expand my chest? How much should I exhale? Am I ready for the next? Like, if you have to think about that, yeah, that's not good. So, but you can't tell someone not to think about something, right? So I kind of like the idea with this breathing, quote unquote, problem, the focusing on the breathing, is maybe turn the tables on it. And like when you lay down in bed, take your time, relax, stretch, when you're in bed, go take your breathing and turn it into something else. Like imagine you are like in the ocean, and you're kind of like doing the rolling wave thing, or you're taking a long drive and you're kind of going up and down hills, real peaceful, serene kind of thing. Imagine it, like picture it. So maybe that's just a thought, it's just an idea of like turning that into an image, because it's hard to not think about something. You might try that. If it doesn't work, then that's not, I wouldn't continue to do it. But I am a big proponent of imagery in some form. And so, breathing is very natural. And if you can turn that into, and I know other people that do this, I've had clients that do this, they picture kind of that waveform, right? They have that sinusoidal kind of, waveform idea that goes right along with your breathing. Will turn it into an image. Maybe that will then, the idea of imagery is like you're now focused on the imagery and you're not focused on anything else, because you can't focus on two things at the same time. You can only focus on one thing, right? Like we can all do multiple things. Well, I can only do a couple, but I always tell my wife, you can do a million, I can do two. But no one can focus on more than one thing. And so if you focus on the imagery that you started off kind of as a breathing, kind of pattern, and turn it into any kind of imagery you want, that might just be like the way you don't try to sleep.
That's good. It's very good. And again, like I think the tricky thing here is that Faye here is so aware that it's not good to think about your breathing, but how do you stop yourself from thinking about something that you don't want to think about? It's a tricky one. That the imagery suggestions I think sounds great, and I don't have anything else to add to that one. But
make sure you're doing, like, you're going to bed when you're truly sleepy, not just tired. Don't hang out in bed for hours awake, trying to force sleep. That's just going to snowball into a conditioned response. Don't mix alcohol with your sedative medications. I'm not a doctor, but I can very comfortably say mixing alcohol with any kind of medication that sedates you a little bit is ask the doctor right here. That's just no, don't do that. We don't want to hear you doing that. So it's not good for you.
And I think actually we've kind of almost answered the other questions too here, which are like, should I start from scratch watching all your videos? No, that's again like you're reacting to this, like you're doing something different because you stumbled. And same thing, like, should I start doing like implementing something different? No, I think the key is do whatever you did 3 days ago and don't react more to it. Should I just quit medications? I think, when it comes to medications for sleep, a lot of people want to stop taking medications. I think generally speaking, that's a good thing to be wanting. And it's not that complicated, in my opinion, to get off medications as people may think. But I think, again, this is probably not the time, because anything you do now, any change, any adjustment, anything you do now is just going to like highlight that you have trouble sleeping, and it's going to send you in a tailspin, I think. So again, when you have trouble sleeping, like you have like a setback again, the hardest thing to do, but the best thing to do is like not reacting to it. And I know you're towards the end here, Faye towards the end has talked about like hypnic jerks and things of that nature, which are so common when you're hyper aroused. So yeah, I think we'll Faye and Juro, thanks so much for these questions. And any follow-up questions, like please let us know. And then we have some more live questions from Elena here, which is so cool. Let's see, and she did say this before. I don't want to miss the opportunity of having both of you guys mastermind. So nice, love it. All right, Melina says, I know emotions are a strong trigger. Now, I can't sleep if my husband is not in bed, but if he's in the room, not even in bed, I can sleep. Weird. Dan, you always tell us to try find evidence that emotions play a role, and it's not that there is something wrong with you. That was one of them for me. And okay, I think it sounds like when I kind of identified that may be a problem. And what my thinking when I read this was like, I can't sleep if my husband is not in bed. That is what we would call it's a thought, really. It's not like solid, like it's not like 100% solid evidence. And sometimes you can, that's one of those that when I think of that, it's sometimes you can maybe try to challenge if you think that's helpful for you. Meaning, if you think about that time your husband was away or you were in a hotel and you did sleep, you can see that, yes, it's harder to sleep when your husband isn't there, obviously, because he's a source of comfort and like you enjoy his company, right? But if you can kind of move the needle a little bit there and say like, and go from like, I can't sleep if my husband isn't in bed, to like, it takes longer to fall asleep, it's a little bit harder to sleep, then you've come a long way. You've kind of adjusted your thoughts in a kind of more forgiving and helpful manner. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think those are really good comments. Yeah, we get comfortable with a routine, and clearly, spouse, life partner, whoever, if that's consistent with your normal sleep, then yeah, it's going to be like any disruption. It can give you some insomnia, right? Any disruption, and that would be considered kind of like a disruption. So I don't know, ways to mitigate it. Maybe speak to your husband like as you're getting really drowsy in bed. So maybe if like they're gone on vacation or on a trip or whatever, you can maybe talk to them as you're like drifting off, and maybe that will be comforting for you. Just kind of brainstorming here. But clearly, yeah, I mean, I have clients that talk about their pets, that if the dog isn't in the bed or whatever, all this kind of stuff. So we get comfortable with things, and that's natural. That's perfectly natural. So hopefully that.
And yeah. I want to, sorry, Mike, to interrupt it, but I want to take the opportunity to say that Faye, whose email we just talked about, said, thank you, that was really informative. Thank you, Faye, for sharing this. And there's actually...
The doctor is that way. The doctor. I'm not the doctor, but thank you
for
very nice
professor. Comments. I think I'm reacting too much and lots of sleep effort here. I'm naturally very anxious. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks for... And by the way, Faye, I meant to this for a long time. Even from the first time I got a message from Faye, I thought about doing a specific episode on panic attacks, which is so interesting, meaning like I don't want to belittle anyone's problem or like taking this sound like very academic when it's a real problem for so many people. But the key here, and I don't know if you're familiar with this literature, Michael, but when I started reading about panic attacks, it was so interesting to me because I understood that, panic attacks have this very kind of stereotypical pattern. Like there's something that triggers them, and then you start feeling like an escalation phase when you feel more and more symptoms, and you feel like it's coming on, right? And then you have a safety mechanism whereby you sit down or you take it to with that, and then you do that safety thing until it goes away. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is that the weird thing here is that safety mechanism is actually the problem. It keeps you from seeing that nothing would have happened if you didn't do the safety mechanism. So the key to getting over panic attacks is like actually allow it to happen and don't do the safety mechanism, and then you see there's nothing to be scared about, and that's the key to them. Like, have you come across this? Are you familiar with this like type of thinking?
Yeah, and even like the mindfulness techniques that are out there can be really helpful, I think, in situations like that. Some people, it can be really challenging with panic attacks, but there's a lot of things that make sleep challenging. Doesn't mean they're barriers. It just means they're a challenge, right? Yeah. We all have our challenges, chronic pain, some depression. There's other things that can be, associated with difficulty sleeping. So yeah, I think that's your suggestion. That would be really good.
Faith says he looks forward to that episode, and I will do it maybe next week or the following. Totally. And yeah, I think that is it. So everyone, thanks for being live with us, and thanks for the live.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone. And we'll be back. I think this time will work. So probably we're planning to do this time every week, right? 2 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah.
Love it.
That sounds great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.